So I received my import copy of the catchily named Cotton Guardian Force Saturn Tribute the other day, and if you follow Shmup News on Twitter or elsewhere, you may already have heard about some issues regarding this release. Now this package is made up of 3 games, Cotton 2, Cotton Boomerang and Guardian Force, and straight off the bat it does seem a slightly odd collection, with Guardian Force not having much in common with Cotton other than its developer's success and the fact it was a Saturn game. But that's all by the by, because they are without doubt 3 solid games, and if you want to buy them for the Saturn, well, just go have a look on eBay and be prepared to spit your coffee out, because they ain't cheap. And that, I'm sure, is going to make this collection a very enticing proposition for a lot of people. However, as mentioned, there are severe issues with the games at the moment, and they are currently a far more debatable pickup than I think many people would imagine just from reading the product description. Now, since there are 3 games on here, each with very different mechanics, etc., I'm not going to go into too much depth on each one. Instead, I'll just provide a brief overview of each and assess the collection as a whole to try and guide you as to whether this is something you should pick up or not. And spoilers, in its current state, it's probably not. So first, let's address the elephant in the room. What is this big issue the collection has? Well, it's input lag. Now, as you may well know if you watch my channel, I'm not so sensitive to this sort of thing. I consider the Psycho ports playable if not perfect, and I'm happy enough to deal with a little lag so long as it's not making things unplayable. In this case, however, while I wouldn't say it's so bad it's breaking the game, it is bad. It's very, very noticeable, and it is gonna affect your enjoyment. I actually first saw this issue being raised on Twitter, and supposedly we are talking 10 or more frames of lag, and yet I would be surprised if anyone wouldn't notice this during gameplay. I don't have a frame rate counter, and to be honest, the specific number isn't that important to me. The only questions I do care about are, can I feel the lag, and would I notice it if nobody told me it was there? And the answer to both those questions is absolutely yes. My understanding is that it is difficult to get Saturn games running well on your hardware, and that the originals of these games weren't the snappiest in the first place, but that doesn't really change what you're going to experience if you do pick these up. And for those of you who may be thinking, okay, I'll just go get the PS4 version, I have heard that the problem is almost equally as bad there too. And input lag isn't even the only thing wrong here. I hesitate to use the word lazy when it comes to talking about the efforts the developer has made, but when it comes to the controls here, I just can't think of another word. For a start, the confirm and back buttons switch around between A and B depending which menu you're in. Then, once you do start playing, the in-game buttons are just a bit of a mess. Yes, you can remap them, but what are you remapping? Y to X, X to Y, R to A, B to C? It's one of the most confusing and unintuitive systems I've ever seen. I assume it is done this way to allow you to map the buttons on a Saturn controller to your Switch controller, but that's never explained, and there's no visual representation of a Saturn controller to help you out. Once you've played each game for a while and worked out the controls yourself, it does get a bit easier to adapt things to the way you wish, but when you start playing it can be a bit of a struggle. So basically, consider yourself suitably warned. City Connection have not done a great job here, and if bad input lag is a deal breaker for you, then you can consider this deal well and truly broken. Now, with that all out the way, for those of you who may still be interested, let's take a quick look through the 3 games in question, because they are all quality, and that quality does shine through despite the lag. They are hampered here massively, but it's not impossible to get a bit of light enjoyment from them. Cotton 2 feels in many ways like the centre of the collection. Cotton is a well-known name and one of the few Shmup series that seem to transcend the bounds of the genre in terms of popularity and recognition among the wider gaming audience. Cotton Reboot, of course, was released late last year to much well-deserved acclaim, and the news we were getting the sequel seemed like an unmitigated win for fans. Cotton 2 sees the return of the eponymous candy munching witch and her fairy Silk, and also offers the chance to play as Aptly, another witch and Cotton's ostensible rival, with her companion Needle the witch's hat, and it employs the same cute-em-up with spooky element style from the first game. At first glance of some footage you may think things look to be pretty similar to the original, but actually playing the game reveals a number of big changes that seriously mix things up, not the least of which is a set of fighting game style moves for triggering Cotton's various special attacks. Pulling these off in the heat of battle is quite the task, but how much that is due to their innate difficulty and how much is due to the input lag is difficult to judge. There are multiple control schemes available that allow you to map special moves to particular buttons, but as mentioned, that system is not the most user-friendly. As well as the special moves, you can also grab enemies and launch them to deal damage, and create score chains, and overall the game is a good deal more complex. Some may say too complex than its predecessor. It also employs a health bar system instead of the regular lives. It is fun, but it's going to require a fair bit of practice to get the most out of, and for the reasons already discussed, if you're not already familiar with the game, this edition doesn't currently offer the best place for learning and experimenting. Cotton 2 was followed by Cotton Boomerang, and their relationship is something of an odd one. Boomerang is not a sequel to Cotton 2, but it's not as simple as an arrange mode either. It does reuse a lot of elements from its predecessor, but the changes, both visually and in mechanics, are large enough that it really does play and feel like an entirely different game. While it still has the grab attacks and fighting game moves, in general it provides a more streamlined, and some might say more traditional shmup experience. Something I personally feel is quite welcome, and I did find this far easier to get into than Cotton 2. Guardian Force is the outsider of the package. It sees you take control of a tank with a rotatable shot, allowing you to face enemies from all directions and encouraging you to move up and cover all areas of the screen, as well as sometimes turning things to the side to make you play horizontally, or even on occasion scrolling downwards. From my experience with it so far, it seems like it could be a really great game, but unfortunately it is also the game that suffers worst from the issues plaguing this release. I don't know if it's because the input lag is significantly worse with this game, or if it's just due to the ground-based nature of the gameplay, but I found the delay in Guardian Force to be the most stark of all the 3 titles on here. Controlling the tank reminded me of playing the ice levels in Super Mario 64. Especially when quickly switching direction from forward to back or left to right, you feel like your tank is sliding away in the opposite direction, trying desperately to grab a bit of traction. There's also a very weird default button configuration, with clockwise rotation mapped to the right shoulder button, but counterclockwise mapped to Y. Now of course it's not exactly the biggest problem in the world to go change that yourself, but I feel like it's indicative of the slightly slapdash way parts of this release have been put together. And I deliberately say parts, because in other ways it does seem like an effort has been made. There are online rankings and a rewind feature, 2 extras that I imagine are among those that probably require the most effort to add in. There are also save states and an option to reduce the game speed to learn tricky sections, further additions that would usually be worthy of a great deal of praise, but that in this case, while still welcome, can't do anything to mask the far more fundamental issues. Now, as I said earlier, if you were to try to get all these games for the Saturn, we would be talking about a very significant outlay. The fact that all 3 were coming in one, on the surface very reasonably priced package was cause for much celebration when it was announced. And there may well still be people who will think that this is worth it, just to see what each game has to offer, credit feed through the stages, and kind of muck about a bit with the various different systems and mechanics each game employs. And if that's you, you may well get some enjoyment out of this compilation. I have to say, I did not hate every second of playing through these. Yes, the input lag is both noticeable and frustrating, but the games themselves are still full of charm and originality. These are poor versions of them, but if your alternative is no version of them at all, you may still want to consider this. If, on the other hand, you want these because you are looking to sit down and play them pretty seriously, or if you already have a way to play them and are just looking to get them on Switch for portability, then the input lag is, I'm afraid, serious enough that you are very unlikely to have yourself a good time, and you should almost certainly be skipping this. I feel like I should repeat, I am neither some expert player nor someone who's particularly sensitive to lag, but even for me, playing these was a frustrating experience. I wouldn't say definitely do not get this under any circumstances, but it's like a 2 out of 10 port job on some 8 out of 10 games, so I would give it a 5 out of 10 overall, although I hope that what I've said should have already made it very clear to you whether it's likely to be suitable for you or not. Now, City Connection have said they are going to work on fixing the issues with lag, but who knows how long that will take and how much better any fix will actually make things. So yeah, an unfortunate review to have to put out, but still, I hope it was useful for people, and thank you as ever for watching. Hope to see you next time. Cheers.